morning, everyone. It's good to see you out here on a very crisp, cool Wisconsin January morning. Clearly, I'm not Josh Yancey. He asked me to fill in for him today. So we're going to continue on in our study on where Jesus really spent his time in his ministry. He was here, and today we're going to be studying Bethsaida. Last week we studied Bethany. So we'll start out by showing, okay, where is Bethsaida? So Bethsaida, if this is the Sea of Galilee, Bethsaida is here on the northeast edge of the Sea of Galilee, and the Jordan River comes right in here. So it's kind of at the crossroads between the Jordan River and where it comes into the Sea of Galilee. I looked up what Bethsaida means, and in Hebrew, Bethsaida means place of fishing, place of hunting. All right, so that kind of makes sense with its location, where it is. It's right there on the Sea of Galilee. And we're told in the Bible that there's a fair amount of fairly impactful miracles that happened in or around Bethsaida. And in fact, there were 3, maybe 4 of the apostles who were from Bethsaida. We know for sure that Peter, Andrew, and Philip, and we'll see some scriptures that show those, are from Bethsaida. Nathanael is right there with them. And sometimes Nathanael seems to be Bartholomew. I think there's a lot of discussion on maybe they were the same person. I think Nathanael is told to have come from Capernaum, but he's right here in this discussion that we're going to have today. So could be 3, could be 4. And actually the 2 books that we have, one says 3 and one says 4. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. But what we're going to do today is we're going to look at 2 of the miracles that were performed by Jesus there in the Bethsaida area. And then we're going to look at a couple of scriptures that talk about Bethsaida was in fact the home of Philip. Okay, so the first verse we're going to look at is Luke 9. So if you can turn your Bibles there with me. It started in the book, it says 10 through 17, but I think it's important to show the context in the earlier verses in chapter 9. And so I'm going to start back up there and read some of those. And I'm going to have some, thought questions and throw out some things and really want some input from the audience here. So we're looking at Luke 9. And he called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over all the demons and to heal diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to perform healing. So I'm going to stop right there and just talk about that. So what's going on here is Jesus has amassed and collected and, picked all of his apostles, and he had all 12 of them together, and he's basically given them their ministry. He's given them their mission on what they're going to go do. And oh, by the way, he gave them miraculous powers. He gave them powers to cast out demons. He gave them powers to heal sicknesses, right? So then he tells them now in verse 3, and he said to them, take nothing for your journey, neither a staff, nor a bag, nor bread, nor money, and do not even have 2 tunics apiece. Whatever house you enter, stay there until you leave that city. And as for those who do not receive you, as you go out from that city, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. Departing, they began going out through the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. Okay, so I want to kind of see what the feeling is on why would he tell them, take nothing with you? He's sending them out into the area, and he's telling them, don't take anything with you. Why do you think he would do that? John?
Proof of concept.
Proof of concept. Elaborate, please.
Jesus instilled knowledge to give them the faith that they could do the works once he was gone. Now he's saying, go do it.
Okay.
Live the faith.
Anybody have a different thought on that? I do. So let's see what. Let's see what. Yes, ma'am.
He wants them to know that God is their provider, and they shouldn't put their faith into what they have. And he wants them to also know that whatever progress they make is from God entirely.
Yeah, that's good too. And my thought on that was, they're going to have to go in, they're going to have to be reliant on people, and they're going to go into households. And he wanted them to know that those households that they're going to go into they're going to be there supportive for them and account for their needs. And if they're not, then they're not necessarily worth their time. That's the way I took it. But all of those are good points. Good. Okay. So then verse 6, departing, they began going out through the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. Verse 7, now Herod, tetrarch, heard of all that was happening, and he was greatly perplexed because it was said by some that John had risen from the dead. He's talking about John the Baptist, right? And by some that Elijah had appeared, and by others that one of the prophets of old had risen again. Herod said, I myself had John beheaded, but who is this man about whom I hear such things? And he kept trying to see him. So I don't know how you feel about that, but it's not necessarily ever a good thing to draw the attention of somebody who's just beheaded, someone who was, very close. Most of them you were very close to, and was out there proclaiming God and Jesus coming, right? So they were getting attention, not necessarily good attention. Yeah. All right. So then that was kind of the background of where we're heading into today. So in the book, it really started in verse 10. So if someone could read, let's read verse 10 through, just read 10 and 11 for now. Go ahead.
When the apostles returned, they gave an account to him of all they had done. Talking with him, he withdrew by himself to a city called Bethsaida. But the crowds were aware of this and followed him. And welcoming them, he began speaking to them about the kingdom of God and curing those who had need of healing.
Okay. So a couple of thoughts here. So they came back. They had been out preaching, doing miraculous deeds throughout the region. They came back, and he pulls them away basically to a desolate area. Why do you think he did that?
Just spend some time with them and talk about what's been going on.
Sure. Get a report of what they've been doing. Sure.
They had a problem with a lot of things that were happening anyway, so he had to keep telling them what was happening.
Yes.
Plus, if it's really desolate and nothing there, I bet you the crowds probably wouldn't follow as easily. They'd probably have some private time.
Right. I can think there was probably a certain amount of excitement on behalf of the apostles, and they wanted to come back and really tell Jesus what they've been doing. So that was one thing. I would think, what you said about the people that were there and what we talked about, Herod, protection also. Get away from all the people that are wandering around and that might be not so happy with them. So maybe for protection. Baxter, do you have a comment?
Said before that I love people, but they wear me out sometimes. like an introverted type of thing where you need time to recharge and get away from those crowds.
So if you pull them away to a desolate area, and one of my comments here, my thinking here was, where did all those people come from? This is not a very big city. Why were there? We're going to see the healing of the feeding of the 5,000. Where did they all come from? Why were they all there?
Well, you interact with people, and people travel. And they go further and further outside the circle. The people further and further outside the circle get the news of what's happening, and then they want to see for themselves, just like Herod. Herod hasn't found Jesus yet, but everyone else has.
Right. But I think about the mode of transportation in this area. How did they get around?
Walk.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you amass 5,000 people unless they were already there, or they were there maybe for a specific reason? The Passover. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I came up with, was because I always wondered, why were they there in such maybe a potentially desolate area? Well, they were traveling through and out that region to be there for Passover. You bet. Okay. Any questions about that background? And then we can, if not, then we can go into the feeding of the 5,000. Okay. So this is verses 10 through 17. So if somebody could read that, please. Well, 12 is now 12 through 17.
When the day began to wear away, the 12 came and said to him, send the multitude away that they may go into the surrounding towns and country and lodge and get provisions, for we are in a deserted place here. But he said to them, you give them something to eat. And they said, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all these people. For there were about 5,000 men. And then he said to his disciples, make them sit down in groups of 50. And they did so, and made them all sit down. Then he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke them and gave them to the disciples to set before the multitude. So they all ate and were filled, and 12 baskets of the leftover fragments were taken up by them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we've all heard this story. We've all studied it in the past, in our Christian life. But there's a lot going on here, right? So the apostles, it's getting late in the day. I think their heart was in the right place. They said, "Why don't you send these people away so they can go get some food?" And what did Jesus say? He said, "Feed them." And they're like, "What? Go buy them food? We only have, these 5 loaves and 2 fish. What do you want us to do?" So what does that say a little bit about where the apostles were at this point? I mean, did they completely understand the depth of what Jesus was capable of doing? Didn't seem like it. But I get their point. They're being very practical. It's like, what are we going to do? Right? So he asked them to have the people sit down in groups of 50. I thought that was oddly specific. Why 50? Baxter recommended this book to us recently, and looking through there, if you look, Luke says, have them sit down, groups of 50. Mark said, let's see here. One of the Gospels says 50 to 100. Basically, the idea is he's telling them to have them sit down in groups that are manageable, and then he's going to figure out how to feed them. I wonder too, who's going to go out and feed them? Where are all the people that are going to come serve them? Right? They're going to have to just pass things around in amongst each other, or what? But so what did Jesus do? They gave him the loaves and the fish. What did he do? He says he blessed it, broke it, and then started handing it out. And it was just like never-ending supply, right? And everyone was fed and got everything they wanted to eat, and they had left over.
And they were leftovers.
Yeah, and they had leftovers. Okay, so this was one of the only miracle that I read about that was mentioned in all 4 Gospels. Why do we think that it was so important? What was the significance of this, that it was mentioned in all 4 Gospels?
So impressive, I guess.
Well, impressive. It kind of speaks to benevolence, having compassion on the people that are there to learn about Jesus, right? Any other thoughts on that?
All the disciples were together, whereas some miracles, sometimes all the disciples weren't together.
Okay. Yeah. I think that covers everything I had on that. Anybody else have any other comments that want to mention about this? Baxter?
I don't have the parallel here. Is this the one with the boy who gets up the fish, or was that the other one?
That wasn't mentioned here.
Okay, like in the parallel. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just the apostles said all we have is the loaves and fish.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the feeding of the 4,000 then, I believe. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if I missed anything I wanted to talk about.
Hey, I was thinking that
Yes.
maybe they put that in the Gospels because it showed that the disciples doubted, even though they were with Jesus, that they still, like we were talking about, didn't grasp, what he can do.
And wasn't that almost a continuous recurring theme throughout?
It was.
I can imagine that it would be hard to completely grasp it, even though they were seeing it. But yeah,
With 12 of them, you'd think one of them would say, hey, don't you know, we give you this,
especially what they've been seeing and
Right.
what they were doing on their own.
Yeah.
The power they had been given. Right. Yeah, you would think it would sink in at some point. Okay. Well, let's then talk about the next miracle, which was the healing of the blind man, right? So that is in Mark 8:22 through 26. you guys are going to have to offer up more content here because this maybe go faster than I intended. I counted on a little more discussion. So if somebody can read Mark 8:22 through 26, please.
And they came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to Jesus, and implored him to touch him. Taking the blind man by the hand, he brought him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes and laying his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see men, for I see them like trees walking around." Then again he laid his hands on his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored, and began to see everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, "Do not even enter the village." Is that what verse?
That was fine.
Okay.
Okay. So it starts out they came to Bethsaida, so you kind of need to think about what had been going on prior to this. Anybody understand what the context was or can comment on where they had come from, what had just happened leading up to this? It took me a little bit to go look into this. So the way I read this was backing up a bit. Andrew and Peter had just become apostles, basically. They had just committed to be apostles. Let's see if we back up. Let me get here on my phone right quick. But this is it's almost in the transition between John the Baptist and his ministry and Jesus taking up his full ministry and the apostles going along with him, right? John the Baptist is still in the area. And at one day, John was with some of his disciples, and you can back up and see this in earlier verses. And Jesus walked by and he says, "Oh, there's the Son of God," or in the Lamb of God in that phrase. And Andrew and Peter heard that, and they were interested in what he was saying, and then they basically went to Jesus. Let me back up here. This is Mark 8:22 and 26. Let me get there. Let me find the actual verses. Let's see. Well, maybe that's the next one. Okay. Got a little confused there. But anyway, healing of the blind man. I moved down once. I'm sorry. Healing of the blind man, right? So it says they came to Bethsaida, right? So I was wondering what had been going on before that. But upon arriving in Bethsaida, the people in the area brought him a blind man. So my understanding was they came to Bethsaida via boat, and then they, for whatever reason, as they were in wherever they were, the people in the area brought to him this blind man. What does that say about the attitude of the people that were already there in the region, or what they knew about Jesus? Right. And it says they begged him to touch him and heal him, right? So there was already a lot of belief of the people in the region because of what they've already seen or what they'd heard, that Jesus was capable of healing this blind man. And they had faith that if they brought him to him, he would heal him. So it says that he led him out into a desolate area again, right? He took him away a little bit. Why do you think he did that?
To be alone.
Well, to be alone. Maybe not to be so visible and be boisterous. Like, there was a lot of faith healings going on in the time in the region anyway. Maybe he didn't want it to be so public, be so obvious, overt, right? Caleb.
When I'm at school and a kid needs something, I generally take them to the hall or somewhere or not in the middle of everybody. So you can focus on them and make sure you're hearing exactly what they need and you can pay attention.
So it didn't necessarily become a circus act then or magic. It was more personal, maybe, for the blind man as well, right? Okay. One of the odd things about this miracle was this is one of only two in Jesus' ministry that was done in stages. Almost every other miracle was instantaneous, right? The woman touched the back of his cloak and she was healed, right? So this one is odd. He did it in 2 stages. What are your thoughts on that? I wonder what the significance of that is. Yeah.
Well, I think I would have to be very sure that he could help me to let him spit on my eyes.
Well, I was going to get to that. Yes.
So, I mean, it's just showing a lot of faith with that to begin with.
Well, he didn't see it coming. Did he?
No, but he heard it. He heard it.
Sorry. Yes.
Well, my thought is it would be scary to not be able to see it and then suddenly see it. It would be so blinding and so much and it'd just be overwhelming. So by doing it in stages, kind of got the guy a little bit used to seeing. Wouldn't be as shocking.
Maybe. Yeah. Did you have a comment? Yeah.
I think, like what she said, doing it in stages allowed the blind man to adjust his sight. And it can apply to other things. And God doesn't always answer our prayers immediately. Sometimes does it in stages so that we can prepare for the result. And He doesn't overwhelm us.
Okay. Yeah. But back to what you said, Denise, that was one of the things that stuck out at me. He spit on his eyes.
Yeah.
You know, that would just gross any of us out today.
Yeah. I see that with special ed kids, sometimes they spit on the staff. And I've never had it happen to me, but it's very humiliating. And, you know, there's big, strong guys trying to hold them and, you know, they were like, it just made them feel ashamed that they weren't strong enough or couldn't figure out how to make this kid stop doing this.
What bigger sign of disrespect can you think of than spitting on somebody?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And plus nowadays, if Jesus tried to do that, people would freak out about germs and STDs and STIs and whatever else infection. And I mean, no way would I let somebody else spit on my eye because it's a direct link to all of your immune. Like,
Exactly.
not a chance.
Patsy.
Well, this man, I mean, he took him by the hand and led him out of the city. So the man didn't have a clue what was going on, probably.
Right.
If he had heard about the other healings, he probably knew that it was instantaneously done, and so the blind man probably didn't know what was going on, and then Jesus, when Jesus spit on him, he didn't really realize that probably until it was over anyway.
Right.
But I think that's right too, if you've ever had anything done with your eyes, it needs to be in stages, because it's like, when you have surgery on your eyes, they want you to wear sunglasses, or when you have your eyes dilated,
That's
they
true.
always make sure.
So maybe it wasn't such a shock. Maybe that's why he did it in stages.
Yeah,
To kind of get him prepared for, oh, I can see a little bit now.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden he could see completely. Maybe.
Well, I remember when I've been wearing glasses since I was 3 years old.
Mhm.
And so when my mother, when I got my glasses, my mother said, well, I'm afraid she won't wear them. And the doctor said, oh, she'll wear them because she can see with the glasses and she can't see without them. So, it was stages like that,
Yeah.
So,
Do you remember when I got my glasses the first time?
Huh.
You were with
I
me.
remember when I got my glasses the first time.
It was like, whoa, I didn't know what I was missing.
My mom cried the first time I got my glasses because I could then see the leaves on the trees.
yeah. That's what I said at 3 years old. I said, oh, the trees have leaves.
So we talked about, was there a comment over here? Okay. So we talked about the faith of the people that brought the blind man to Jesus. What about the faith of the blind man?
Yeah.
because they'd had conversations. Hey, we're going to take you out here to this guy who's been doing all these miracles, and we're going to ask him to heal you. He had to have a certain amount of faith too, that he was going to be healed, or maybe it was I got nothing to lose. Why not? I don't know. John.
What about all the faith of his friends to bring him to
Right.
Jesus?
Yeah.
It's like they believed Jesus could do it.
Right.
They knew he had special abilities, and they didn't question it at all, ever. Jesus said, "Okay, now we're going to leave you off over here." They're like, "Okay, see you later, buddy."
Right. Again, thinking about traveling in the region, were they already in Bethsaida? Were they already close, or did they have to travel a distance to get there? I don't know, but traveling was just not easy. And so, yeah, good. So, why do you think Jesus then told the blind man, don't go back to the village? In a couple of the other Gospels, it says, don't go to the village and don't tell anybody. What do you think about that?
He told that to a lot of people.
He did.
But I guess the word got around enough without them telling people.
Like we said earlier, do you think it's because he didn't want to be overly boisterous? He didn't wouldn't feel like go out and bragging about it, or having other people think, well, this guy's here and he's doing these things. He didn't want to bring undue attention upon himself. I don't know. Yes.
I see a potential problem in this. It's kind of off a rabbit hole, but if I'm blind and then I go with some stranger off in the middle of nowhere, I've got buddies who supposedly brought me to this guy, and then he says, don't go back to anywhere. Don't talk to anybody. What if the guy just took me out in the middle of nowhere and killed me and left me for,
Right.
wouldn't his friends go look for him? Or, somebody's got to at least try and find it. I would hope anyways, try and find this guy, because everybody's been supporting this person and keeping an eye on him, feeding him, making sure he doesn't fall out of a well for however long he's been living. And
And he'd be like, where do I live?
how do I get back?
He wouldn't have any idea where to go back to.
He's never seen
I
it.
would,
Yeah.
I would be suspicious of Jesus. What did you do with my friend? I'd be upset. Did you hurt him? Where is he?
Right. John.
Reverse psychology.
Well, I don't know. Denise?
I know. I'm being
Little facetious.
a little facetious here. Well, okay, don't in modern times, without Jesus, if you say don't tell somebody, what happens to the secret?
It's immediately affects public. Right.
Everybody. So I'm something like that could have happened potentially.
Yeah. Back here first, and then back to you, Denise. Yes.
I think it's also because of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He didn't want them to find out, because they were obviously, Jesus being around was a threat to their power.
And they're constantly having run-ins with that group, right? Jesus and the apostles. Yes. Denise.
I don't think he knew his way back home because he couldn't see. So maybe he would be able to, because that was a miracle anyway, he would be able to stay where he is and do for himself.
Well, honestly, do you think after being blind all of your life and suddenly you can see, and this guy tells you after he heals you, don't go tell anybody?
Yeah.
You think he listened? Probably not. Michelle.
Well, it allows him to have a normal life without having people, oh, you're the one that was blind.
Maybe. Yeah. Because then you become kind of a sideshow
Right.
attraction. Maybe.
It doesn't say do not ever enter, go back.
Right.
You could probably go back a year or two later. Then it would be different. It'd be a miracle, but it wouldn't bring out the other people who want to go after Jesus.
Yeah. That would be an interesting position to be in. You've been blind all of your life. You don't know any other than feel for your surroundings. And now you're told don't go anywhere, don't go back to where you think you know where you're from. So that's an interesting one.
So Dave,
Yes, sir.
just so he didn't tell him not to tell, right?
He just said don't go back.
Well, it depends on which. Let me find that in the harmony of the Gospels, because one of them says don't tell anybody. Right.
So this is what do we have, Mark 8:26?
Yes.
Mine says, and he sent him to his home, saying, do not even enter the village. I don't see a parallel
Yeah.
count on this in the harmony.
Okay.
So I would take this, he sent him to his home. Jesus knows that he can get to his home, otherwise that'd be cruel to tell him, go to your home. So the guy's gonna find his way home. But I think he's saying, do not even enter the village, meaning don't go back to that mess of a mob. But you need to go home, to your family or whatever that was.
Mhm.
Right.
The
And
Amplified says, and he sent him away to his house, telling him, do not even enter the village or tell anyone there.
right. So I was going to say, I was looking at different versions and I saw that in different versions. And it says as a footnote in the harmony, some manuscripts don't go and tell anyone in the village. So it depends on, I guess,
Okay.
which version you're reading. But either way, I don't think he probably listened. At least he didn't listen for very long. He might not have immediately gone back, but ultimately he did. And it became very well known, I would think.
Also King James
King James says, don't tell anybody.
said, nor tell it to anyone.
Baxter.
Without looking into that, my feeling is the King James is based on more recent manuscripts, and so I'm guessing the New American Standard would be more accurate on that. There's a good chance a scribe probably added and don't tell anybody because they knew that Jesus said that elsewhere to somebody else. So like, I just noticed when Patsy was reading, she very briefly said 4,000 when it was 5,000.
Mhm.
It's because she knew the other account.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so scribes would do that when they spent all day, every day copying. You would tend to add and don't tell anybody, even though that's not actually the original. So just interesting. I had another rambling thought on the two-stage miracle.
Mhm.
Is there a chance that he had two things wrong with his eyes, and Jesus fixed one and then the other? You know, like sight is complicated. So let's say your retina is detached. Jesus fixed that. And then there's some other issue with the focus, and then Jesus fixed that. I don't know.
I suppose.
Yeah, my aunt has a fourth.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. We've got two other scriptures to cover here. The next two are really just dealing with, and they list Philip's home is Bethsaida, but there's so much else going on. I mean, we can read in what it says, okay, yes, he was from Bethsaida, but then there's a whole lot of thought questions that go along into those scriptures as well. So the next one is John 1:43 through 51. John 1:43 through 51. Can somebody read that, please?
The next day he purposed to go into Galilee, and he found Philip, and Jesus said to him, follow me. Now Philip was from Bethsaida, of the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Nathanael said to him, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip said to him, come and see. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him and said of him, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit. Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? Jesus answered and said to him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel. Jesus answered and said to him, because I said to you that I saw you under a fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see the heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man.
All right, thank you. So this is the one I was mistakenly jumped to a little bit earlier. This is where I was talking about is kind of the transition between John to Jesus. And this is where Andrew and Peter, if you read the scriptures before, had just become apostles. And now this calls out, Bethsaida as being Philip's home. And it mentions that Peter and Andrew were all from Bethsaida. Okay, and then it said that Philip went and found Nathanael. So here's the mention of Nathanael that we were talking about earlier. It doesn't say that he's really from Bethsaida, but it says he's in the area. And then there's a whole lot of things going on here where what do you think Philip going to find Nathanael in this instance really meant? So why did he go find Nathanael in the first place, right? So Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth." So he went to Nathanael as being one of his friends or close contacts, basically saying, "Hey, we found Jesus." Doesn't that sound like a bit of evangelism? He wanted Nathanael to be there with him when he went and saw Jesus as well. They could go find him together. So he was reaching out to him thinking, okay, if I go talk to him, he can come with me and we can both go see Jesus. And Nathanael's response, was a bit interesting. He says, "Could anything good come from Nazareth?" So he was a little bit skeptical that this Messiah, the one that Moses had written about, could he really come from Nazareth? And then you can see the rest of that there, that, he interacts with Jesus and Jesus says he knows him. And how do you know him? How do you know me? And ultimately he says, "Oh, you are the Son of God." And he then believes, and the rest is history, so to speak, right? So yes, this just said Philip is from Bethsaida, but there was a lot more going on there. Getting Nathanael in there and his potential lack of faith or belief or understanding, and then ultimately is convinced and ultimately becomes one of the apostles. Right? So we got one more verse and then a conclusion. And so the next verse again it's really Philip's home is Bethsaida. It's John 12, 20 through 26. And I'll just read that. "Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the feast. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. 'Sir,' they said, 'we would like to see Jesus.' Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip in turn told Jesus. Jesus replied, 'The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth, unless the kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. The man who loves his life will lose it, while the man who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me first must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me.'" So the point to reading the scripture was, okay, Philip, he was from Bethsaida. But it says that Greeks among those at the feast came to Philip saying, we want to see Jesus. What does that tell you that the Greeks thought about Philip or knew about Philip already? It means that they knew that Philip was associated with Jesus, and that if they came to him and asked him, that he could take them to Jesus, and they wanted to go see Jesus. So he was already, at this time, a very visible person and already known to be associated with Jesus. I'm not sure why Philip went and told Andrew, and then Andrew and Philip went to Jesus. I'm not sure we know about that. But it's an interesting way to go about it. And then what's your take on Jesus' reply here? "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified."
He's thinking about his future death.
He's telling them about things that are about to come, right? Glorified, sometimes glorified is code for about to be crucified, right? No, yes, Patsy.
Well, several times when things happen, Jesus would say, "It's not my time yet." Like the one time that he went through the crowd, he just turned around and left through the crowd. And he said, "It's not my time yet." And so now it was
He's saying time is now, right? Yeah. And his comment about the wheat, he's basically, what do you think he's saying there? What does he really mean?
He has to die to save.
And he has to die to multiply, basically. Right.
To establish a church.
Yes. And through his death, many more would come to follow. Yes, and be saved. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me draw a couple of conclusions here. So we learned that, Bethsaida was the home of 3, possibly 4 apostles. We learned that there were many notable miracles that happened either in Bethsaida or near Bethsaida. We know that Bethsaida and the region had a tremendous exposure to the workings of Jesus and the workings of the apostles and things that were going on. So they had seen many things. But yet they weren't accepting of Jesus. And we know that Jesus condemned them, right, for it. And so the overall, we could go through and read Matthew 11. It's in 21 and 22, Matthew 11, 21, 22. But the idea here is, they felt like they had seen all these miracles, and there were others Jesus condemned them for, that if you had seen all these miracles, Tyre and Sidon would have already repented. And so he was condemning them for seeing what they had seen and not being accepting to his word. So, the take home from us there is, okay, we don't get to see necessarily miracles today, but we can read about them and we've seen them, and he will condemn us if we're not accepting of his word. So just because you don't see a miracle doesn't mean those things didn't happen. But just because these people saw it, they didn't believe it anyway. So they were condemned because of that. So any thoughts as we close? Okay, thank you.
All right. You feeling better?
Yes.